All right, talking game number one for Iowa men's basketball for the 2023-24 season. First opponent, North Dakota Fighting Hawks. Didn't do much research coming into this game. I will try to do research in these post-game recaps for most of Iowa's opponents. They're generally in the top 150 of KenPom. I don't really want to put too much effort into thinking about mid-majors. Just because I just really don't feel like doing so. Kind of interesting. I didn't realize North Dakota had a former clone on their team, Eli King. He has my hairline, although he's a much better player, I'm sure. Didn't know that. Kind of glad Iowa kept him in check because of that. That's pretty much all I kind of wanted after doing that. I was like, oh, I don't want that guy going off. That just pissed me off. So 1 of 9 shooting, 2 points for him. That makes me feel good. But beyond that, I mean, not much to say about North Dakota. Just kind of want to move on. Primarily focus on this from an Iowa perspective. So as I did with the exhibition game against Quincy, I want to start off with defense. Again, generally, because I think that's what most people want to hear about when it comes to Iowa basketball games. Is defense any better, any worse? Could it get any worse? I hope not. But so there's a bit to talk about from a defensive standpoint in this game. So the first thing that I really want to highlight, and I'm starting off with a negative, but I think it does need to be said. So when it comes to Iowa, just a problem I've just noticed over the course of the years is we really struggle to locate shooters or rotate shooters properly. And I think this game is a pretty good example of that issue just come to the forefront. In this game, there's just too many times where you see 2 players either rotate to the same shooter and thus it leaves another shooter wide open. Sometimes you just see players just not rotate any shooters at all and just eventually the ball finds the open guy if a team is smart and just moves the ball well enough. And it's disappointing to see that kind of continue in this game. And I don't want to specifically highlight anybody for having breakdowns mentally in this aspect, because you can point the finger at several players in this instance. I don't really feel like outing individuals when it's really a collective issue. The only thing I will say is there's one time I noticed I want to give players credit when they actually do this properly. So it was coming out of a baseline out of bounds play for North Dakota. I know this because we were playing in the zone at the time. Ball got rotated. Peyton Sanford plays in the corner in the zone 3-4 position. In this situation, he was in the left corner for the offense. Ball got reversed his way. He thought the pass was a little lazy, not the hardest, most crisp pass. So he's like, okay, I'm going to jump the passing lane, try to see if I get it. He couldn't quite get there. And I just really want to highlight this because I think Josh Dix, is probably not going to get as much credit defensively as you would think. So again, Iowa, 2-3 zone, what have you. So so Peyton would have been right here, and you see, okay, going out here because he sees the ball getting reversed, trying to get a steal, doesn't quite get there, and the great play on this, I thought this was excellent rotation, and you can make an argument like, okay, he's like Dick shouldn't have to make this play, but he was the one who ended up making the play. I just love players who are paying attention. So in this situation, this is actually Josh right here. And the interesting thing about this rotation, I thought, is he's on this elbow, the opposite elbow from where Peyton is. And despite that, he comes all the way over here. He sees Peyton reaching, and he comes all the way over there to stop this player from getting a wide open shot. And you can make the argument, I forget who was on the floor with him at the time at the top of the 2-3 zone. It's either Desante or Tony. I don't remember which. You can make an argument one of them should have been the one to recover for Tony, for Peyton, I should say. But I thought this was a really standout rotation. It's like, hey, it's like he saw Peyton lunge and like really quick to react. Was there before this player could even have a chance to really pull up to shoot. And you know what? The first thing about this possession is this did force a ball reversal, and North Dakota did eventually make a contested 3 in this possession. But in this effort from Josh, it kept the ball on the perimeter and didn't allow them an easy shot. They had to shoot a contested shot, and they make it, they miss it, whatever. But I just thought that was a stand-up play. In general, like, I like what I see from Josh Sticks defensively. I think he's a very underrated one-on-one defender. I think he's in the right position defensively off the ball, as I just illustrated there. I said in my last video that I thought Josh, by the end of the year, I think people were probably more likely to recognize him as one of the better defenders on the team. I thought he would compete for maybe the best defender on the team. And I think he showed exactly why in this game. I think he contained the ball. He was in the right spots defensively. I thought I'd give him a shout out for that rotation there. Because quite frankly, it's a rotation I did not see consistently made by a lot of players. Several players just late, two guys rotate into one player, leaving a guy open. And the frustrating thing about that, it's not just leaving shooters open on the perimeter. You're also leaving a player open on the perimeter. And if that player decides, there's no one boxing them out because, again, like there's no one closing out to them. They can just crash the board for an offense rebound. And Iowa gave them, a 26% offensive rebounding rate in this game. Oh yeah, and they allowed North Dakota State to rebound 26.7% of their misses. I believe North Dakota wound up with 12 total offensive rebounds. That's just too many offensive rebounds against an opponent like this. And rebounding has been a consistent issue throughout the Fran era. You can make an argument it's the biggest systemic weakness of Fran's defense, even going back to some of his mid-major days, if you look at some of the advanced sites. And it's frustrating to see. A lot of it just comes down to like guys who are just out of position, and it just gives the opponents just almost free reign to the bucket for an offensive rebound to crash a glass. But anyway, moving on. I think our ability to scramble out and rotate to the right shooters in like a scramble drill kind of situation, I don't think was very good in this game. From a one-on-one defensive standpoint, I was actually pretty happy for the most part with what I saw. I think you can like find instances of guys like getting driven by. And I'll get to some egregious examples maybe later on, but I think I, for the most part, liked what I saw from that standpoint. I want to particularly highlight Desante Bone in this instance. I was a little harsh on him maybe in the exhibition game, because from what I saw, the player was most consistent to beat off the dribble. Not that it was like every single time, but he got his fair share of mistakes, or I guess I wouldn't say mistake. He got beat a couple times in one-on-one defense against a lower non-D1 opponent. That was a little disappointing to see. But in this game, really liked it. Got beat off the dribble one time that I remember. But for the most part, played really aggressive, managed to stay in front of his player. And it's really good. And like you kind of look back at last year's advanced stats, and this is something I kind of wanted to make note of. So the main way I wanted to evaluate defensive players is on-off splits. Like, what does Iowa allow per 100 possessions? How many points does Iowa allow per 100 possessions for a team to score when a player's on the floor and when they're off the floor? I think you can use advanced stats like defensive rating, but I don't know if that's necessarily the right way to really evaluate, because a lot of those kind of stats are influenced by just like pure statistical profile, like rebounds, and I think that overinflates the value of some front court players in the defensive rating category. So I think it's a little faulty to use that metric to evaluate defensive players, but it's like I think it's just better. Like, okay, like how much better, how much fewer points does Iowa give up when that player's on the floor? And the interesting thing when you look at DeSante last year, from this standpoint, Iowa was nearly 10 points per 100 possessions better with him on the floor defensively versus off. And that's by far the best on the team, which is interesting. I made sure to adjust this for top 150 opponents. I wanted to get rid of garbage time versus teams that weren't really good last year. And it held up even against good competition. The one caveat would be like, okay, it's like I'm evaluating them against top 150 competition, but some of that's going to come in garbage time maybe versus good opponents. So it's a little faulty to maybe use that data for DeSante coming in. But I just thought it would be interesting to be like, okay, it's kind of an interesting stat to look at. I get this from hoopexplorer.com. And to see like, okay, it's like I was a little harsh on him defensively in last game. So I made a concentrated effort, like, okay, let's key in on him, see like, okay, well, what am I seeing? I think at times he can be a little over aggressive, but I think in a good way. He only picked up one foul in this game. Guy was crossing half court and he just helped a little too much with the body, but I loved his aggressiveness game. It was particularly noticeable at the end of the first half. I mean, he was like possessed almost. He was possessed by a demon at the end of the first half, just wreaking havoc. Led to a couple runouts. It was kind of funny. There was one sequence where Iowa had 3-on-1 late in the first half. It was DeSante, Tony, and Peyton running the floor, and there was only one defender back for North Dakota. And you could tell Tony was like, come on, bro. People want to see me dunk the ball. Throw me an alley-oop. He just threw his hands up. Like, I couldn't see his smile. I'm assuming he was smiling. But it's like, come on, bro. Give the people what they want. And of course, pretty much soon after that, we had another run out and Tony got his dunk. And yeah, the crowd got what they want. That was a cool play, I thought. But I love seeing DeSante's energy defensively. Really active. Really trying to get in passing lanes. Really trying to disrupt what people are doing offensively. Picking up people full court. Good to see. And again, a continuation from the last game against Quincy and everything. Really getting stuck in there for rebounds in traffic. I love seeing that. He's a really easy player to get by. He's really scrappy. He really gives great effort. It's great to see on that front. Yeah, just really happy with what I see from DeSante. Really curious to see if his on-off splits continue to hold up defensively. This team needs to get better defensively, and the guy like that can help. He's got to play. Yeah, needless to say, I really, really curious to see how that holds up. So, kind of moving on, another kind of criticism I had from the last game defensively was Lajit Mbele. Not in the way people probably expect. I think going this year, and I don't necessarily read too much off-season hype because I just kind of tune that stuff out. But a lot was made about Lajit's athleticism and that making an impact coming in this year. And from what I said in the last game, I think he can make an impact vertically with his athleticism. Laterally, I think it's a bit of a problem. He got blown by 3 times pretty easily in the last game. And I was curious, like, okay, is that just maybe a consequence of like playing a super small opponent and guard-oriented lineups? Like, okay, maybe it's just a one-game thing. I'll try and give him a chance again. But it kind of happened again in the second half here. In that, there was a section where Iowa got scored 11-3 in the second half in a 4-minute media segment between what timeout was? Yeah, it was between the under 12 and the under 8 timeouts. That 4-minute stretch, Iowa scored 11-3, and he got blown by 2 times in that segment, and it's not even, again, like it's like I said in the last video, it's not even one of the situations where he's kind of riding a guy for a little bit and his physicality might be able to bump him off. Like, no, he's just getting completely blown by. He's not able to like bump him off, use his strength to bump the driver off his move pretty much. And it was disappointing to see that again. I really like Logi. I want to say that, and again, I'm going to get why. There's going to be a lot of moments where I really, really like him because I really like him individually as a player. I just really wish he was. I think it would be a better fit for him to play the center position, and I think that's going to be something he's asked to do next year, and I'm really excited for that. I think he's going to be really good in that spot next year. I just think there's going to be some matchup issues at times this year playing at the 4. Iowa's going to have to be cognizant of that. There's certain opponents where I just don't think he's going to be able to play that much because I just think he struggles laterally. He also got blown for one foul where he just didn't maintain verticality. He was just at this point, not straight up, just leaning down. It's just a little bit of ways to go defensively. And also, this is kind of like another thing. So, if you're watching what North Dakota was trying to do, a lot of back screens, a lot of kind of UCLA kind of action. What do I mean by that? So, the UCLA. So 3 offensive players here. So in the UCLA, what you do, the guy up top, point guard generally, but it doesn't have to be a point guard necessarily. The guy up top throws to the wing, and then he proceeds to cut all the way to the rim. He receives a screen from a guy at the free throw line at the elbows. And the idea is like, okay, it's like, if this guy's open, throwing the ball for a cut, for a layup or whatever. So in this kind of, and they were running this a lot. And what Iowa was generally doing was just switching. So like this player would just go with this guy, and this player would just have this guy. They would just switch their guard option. And one breakdown I noticed, and Iowa generally guard this action pretty well. There was one other time where North Dakota threw a really good pass and it beat our coverage, but I don't think it was necessarily a defensive breakdown. But there was one time where they ran this UCLA action, and Logi was the player guarding the forward at the free throw line, and Owen was actually guarding the player up top. So I'm assuming it was the 2 front court players for North Dakota. And if, particularly with Owen and Logi, like if they run this UCLA kind of action, it really needs to be a switch. They're both really college centers. There's no reason why you should not switch. The situation where you might not want to switch, if like say this really was your point guard in our second unit, this player would then be Brock, and this would be like Owen or Lodge or whatever. In that case, you might be hesitant about switching because Brock is scrawny, 6 foot. That might create some problems if he's asked to guard a forward player in that switch. It might be a problem for Lodge or Owen having to guard a guard in a switch. I don't know if they're in the most mobile. So you wouldn't want to maybe switch that. But again, you have 2 front court player centers. This really needs to be a switch. And Logi, he's behind the play. He can see the play. He needs to communicate. He needed to be communicating that to Owen, and you can just tell he didn't. And it led to a wide open layup, and it's just a little disappointing. I just feel like Logi has potential. I'm just not super certain it's going to be there this year defensively. But I do like him as an individual, as a player. In terms of, speaking of Owen Freeman, a lot of foul trouble, particularly in the second half. It almost felt like I don't know if this for certain, but it felt like all his fouls came in the second half. He picked up 4 fouls. It was really disappointing to see because this is the second game in a row where he's gotten a steal on a ball reversal on the perimeter. Goes out, gets a steal, and goes the other end and scores. So like, it's really good to see that. It's good to see that athleticism from your center. He's capable of making that play. There's another play. He got another steal in this game where his guy brought the ball low and he showed really good quick active hands to swipe it too. Got on the floor and we were able to get a break going. So like really quick active hands from Owen. And I was getting ready after the first half to really praise what he's capable of. It's like, oh yeah, I'm really loving it. And then in the second half, it was a struggle bus. So many fouls, just so many. It's like, oh man, that's just not good at all. It's just kind of lazy foul. Not that he's not trying, but it's just like, what is that foul, man? Come on now. I don't want to put it on him because I'm sure you can find reasons why. Maybe it might have been his teammates let him down, whatever. But it's just disappointing. Again, another situation where there's a couple times we didn't stay vertical when contesting shots. We'd just like to see a little bit better. But did get great effort, and you can see the potential defensively. It's just a matter of being more consistent. But again, considering how much he seems to be trying to make plays happen steals-wise, you might see foul trouble become a consistent issue for Owen going forward in this year. I hope not, because I said in the last, I said in my last video versus Quincy that I'm kind of inching towards wanting to start him over Ben Krikke, which might seem like a bit of a bold take, but to be honest with you, it's partially because I really like his defensive potential. But if he doesn't realize that defensive potential, he's not going to play as much as he probably wants to. But there's a lot there. It's just a young player going through the motions. For both him and Logi, I think they have work to do. But players I think to be excited about for a variety of reasons. Yeah, so I think what else defensively? I still like Brock. He really moves his feet well side to side. I still have questions about how it's going to work out when somebody tries to play bully ball with him. But like, man, the way he moves side to side, he's just so agile and just he changes directions really well. You can just tell it's like it'll be interesting to see how Brock handles things defensively as the competition becomes more athletic. It's just going to be really interesting because honestly, he holds up there. It's like, woof, we got a guy there. But yeah, anything else? I think just in general, really good activity from. I mentioned a couple players by name, but really good activity from guys like Tony and Peyton as well. Yeah, I think the energy level was a good spot. I think one-on-one defensively, I think wasn't really so much my issue in this game. I just think Iowa really needs to work on scramble drills the next couple of days of practice. And again, it's kind of been an issue, honestly, in the Fran era, so I'm not necessarily expecting it to get better, but still, it's like you'd like to see it get better, I guess. But anyway, so touching on the offensive side a little bit, I'm so happy. So this is kind of weird. I'm gonna go on a quick segue before I get to my point. When people ask about like, okay, like what's like when you're talking about like just the way Iowa plays offensively, like what's one of your more favorite ways for Iowa basketball for the way they play offensively? And it's kind of a weird answer. I don't think would be most people's first answer. I really like the way the 2016-2017 team developed offensively. What do I mean by that? And so like, I wasn't necessarily like, so I think that year won't be remembered fondly because it wasn't the year we mentioned with the tournament. We were an NIT team. But at the same time, I think like you also have to keep things in perspective. Like we were starting 3 or 4 freshmen for pretty much from late November on. And if you really like take out the first month of the year, Iowa was pretty much playing like a tournament team that entire year. We were beating good teams. We beat the other good teams in the Big Ten Conference. We beat those teams. We were competitive in games. That was a good team that just took a month to figure themselves out because they had a lot of young players. But never mind that, whatever. What I really want to highlight, and the reason why I really like that team offensively a lot, is because I really liked the way that Peter Jock developed as the primary option at the course of the year. So most people remember like him scoring a bajillion points during the first month or so of the season versus, or really, I would say probably the first 2 months of the season. He had like 30-plus game, like high 30-plus games against teams like Iowa State, Michigan, Memphis, Virginia. Even, I don't know if it was a Virginia game. I think it was just a Memphis game that year. But regardless, he had a lot of high-scoring games, and Iowa didn't always win those games, but we won a couple of those games. But that's not really like what I'm talking about. Like what I really like about that year is how Peter developed as a playmaker throughout the course of the year. He had an assist percentage that year. let's see here. So that year, Peter had an assist percentage of 17.5, which I don't think is pretty mundane. But you really saw that skyrocket to 20% in Big Ten play. And why is it important? Because I think when you really think about Iowa's primary scoring options for pretty much the past decade, the Murray twins, Luka Garza, Jared Utoff, Aaron White. I think Devin Marble breaks this trend a little bit. They're really all just pure scorers. They're not guys, they make other players better, but it's not in the way like, okay, they're setting them up for like a wide open three or a wide open layup with passing. That's not necessarily how those guys always make people better. Not that they couldn't pass out of a double team or were just terrible passers. That's just not their mindset. They were all scorers. And Dev broke this trend a little bit. His percentage was around 23 to 24%, I think, if I remember correctly, but I don't know off the top of my head. But they're all primary scorers. And I think that can sometimes make things difficult offensively because it's like, okay, it's like this one guy is scoring a lot of points and it's great, but it's like, okay, like how can you like incorporate other players? Sometimes other players might feel isolated. They might not be getting as much of a ball as they really need to get a flow going. And I think that can kind of create issues. And one of the things I liked is like, as that 2016-2017 team developed, you really saw, okay, Peter started like, okay, I can trust these guys. And I just think like, it really is a symbiotic relationship. Like it helped his willingness to all of a sudden like, okay, like I can trust Jordan Bohannon to make threes. I can trust Tyler Cook to score in the paint. Like I need to get these guys involved. And like, I just think that just, his gravity, his presence just opened up so much for these guys. And it made those freshmen play a lot better than maybe they were capable of. And you saw a little bit of regression the year after that when they didn't really necessarily have that option to create for them. And I really liked, and I just liked having your primary option, like consistently creating for other people. And it wasn't necessarily in the sense of like, oh God, Peter was dribbling 5 million times, breaking ankles left and right. Like, no, it was 1-2 dribbles, coming off screens, and using his shooting presence to get the guys close out hard on him because, hey, he can make Peter lethal shooter, mid-range, three-point range, what have you. He can make him from all three levels. So, like, you had to respect that come out of him. And just open up so much space for guys rolling to the rim, guys on the perimeter. And Iowa really took advantage of that. And I think Peter really evolved as a passer over the course of his senior season. And I think it really made them a more enjoyable watch than you'd anticipate a team full of freshmen being. So why is this relevant? It's kind of weird because I talk about the evolution of Peter from really just scoring loads of points to become more facilitator throughout the course of the year, the senior season. That's kind of what you saw from Peyton Sanford in this game. Starting off this game, shooting from three from pretty much everywhere, parking lot, Quarroville, what have you. And he shows really great versatility in his shot making. He's able to dribble into shots. He's coming off screens, off the move, catch and shoot. He's a really versatile shot maker, and I don't think people realize that. He's not just catch and shoot. He can put the ball on the floor once or twice. Don't want him over dribbling probably, but once or twice, yeah, he can create space for himself off maybe a pump fake. Maybe, again, because Peyton has such a quick release, you have to close out kind of hard on him to take that away. And that opens up a space for, hey, 1-2 dribble, pull up. And I really liked, and like in the first half, you really saw the scoring aspect of it. And not saying you didn't see that aspect in the second half, because you certainly still saw his versatility and his shot making. There was one time, drive along the paint, the right side of the paint, spins back, fade away, going to his left from around 10 feet. He's like, ooh, that's silky. And you saw him once drive baseline, off a pump fake, dunk. Like, that's great shit. Again, showing his versatility as a shot maker. But he really started to look for other people in that second half. A couple times, maybe you can make the argument he was too aggressive, but I love that. I love that he's aggressively looking for the right pass. There's one time he was coming off a down screen from Ben Cricky, and he curled right into it, and that kind of serves as kind of a pick and roll scenario. 1-2 dribble, got the defender to come into his space, and that opens up the role for Ben Cricky to roll the rim, left-hand layup. That was a really good sequence, and that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Using your shooting gravity to open up things for your teammate, to make the game easier for your teammates. I'm really happy to see that from Peyton. It was something I was really hoping he would show for coming into this year, because I've seen the past couple of years, I think particularly last year, in certain moments you can tell Peyton has an eye for passing, but that's not what he was necessarily asked to do on the team. He was the secondary scorer, the third option, second option. From a scoring standpoint, that was his role. But your role is a little different when you're asked to be the primary option. You have to just do something to help make your teammates better. And I really think you really saw that develop in the second half. And I'm just so excited we're starting to see that in game one. Because, again, keeping in mind that Peter Jock's senior season, like he was surrounded by 3 or 4 freshmen. They took a while to probably gain trust of those 3 or 4 freshmen before he eventually, okay, I trust you guys. I'm going to start making plays for you. I'm going to start giving you the ball. I was much further along as a team. Peyton's not surrounded by, like, they're a freshman on the bench, sure, but there's experience in the starting lineup, whether it be Pat, Tony, Ben's played a lot of basketball, DeSante's in his second year. So there's experienced guys who are used to playing in games. So the supporting cast, quote unquote, is much further along than that team's was. So I'm really happy to see him starting to develop those habits of playmaking in game one. I'm really hoping that continues, because I really think it's important that your best player makes other people better. And that doesn't necessarily be through assists, but they have to make the game easier for their teammates in some way. I'm just really happy to see it in this game. And also, I really want to shout this out, because it's something I noticed in the exhibition game too. And I didn't mention it then, but really active from the bench, Peyton Sanford. Really active in calling things down to his teammates. There was one moment late in the second half where he's calling for the bench, hey guys, box out. I think it was during a free throw, I remember. But he was talking like, hey, box out. You can audibly hear him calling up from the bench. And if you watch him on the bench, he's constantly standing up, he's constantly into it, he's constantly cheering guys on, he's constantly talking, you can tell. I think he's really taking that leadership role really seriously, and hey, that's really important. Every team needs that locker room, that good locker room presence, and he seems like a positive guy whenever you just see him in interviews and such, and that manifests itself on the bench. I think that's really good to see. I think he's really taking the initiative from a leadership standpoint. That's a little shout I wanted to make. It's really good to see. Now this is, I don't really want to be too negative about this next point. There's probably too much mid-range shots from Tony Perkins in this game. Just not the best shot selection. And there's a couple times, and he sometimes does this, he fades away from the mid-range, and it's like, you're big and strong, you don't really need to fade away necessarily in the States, just go up strong. And also, like, I mean, this is good, it's good and bad, because at the end of the day, that's his shot, that's his comfort zone, that's where he's comfortable making shots, and we've all seen moments where it works. I mean, everyone remembers that Illinois game. It was just him destroying Illinois from the mid-range game. That was an insane performance. So you know he's capable of that kind of performance. But in this game, it just wasn't clicking, and it's just kind of those moments where it's like, it's like, not really what you want to see. He was 0 for 5 from the mid-range. Just not the best shot selection either. Probably the most disappointing player from the offensive standpoint. And I think it's kind of interesting, because we're going to get into it when it comes to the preview for the next game that I'm going to be able to see. it can be a good thing sometimes to take those mid-range shots when you're playing like a 7-footer. Because like, hey, it's hard to finish around the rim against those guys. You need a floater game against guys like that. But against an opponent like this, without really a shot blocking presence, you really need to be strong taking it to the rim and just finishing through contact. He's capable of that. He has a good 2-point percentage around the rim. So it just feels like you're kind of bailing out North Dakota by taking all those shots in this game. But I think it's a situation where, like, against certain opponents, I think you need that mid-range aspect. This just doesn't feel like it was the game for it. And yeah, it just didn't feel like it was the game for him. So, like, thinking about now, Ben Cricky. So I was kind of like, in the last game, I was like, okay. He just kind of went to his left every single time there. Not really much to say beyond that. Because you're playing a non-D1 opponent. There's no reason to be cute against a non-D1 opponent. Just go up and finish strong. And that's what he did in that game, so there's nothing to criticize really there. But you're interested to see what happens as he starts to diversify his game. You saw the shooting ability. He made a 3 in this game. Saw him great shooting ability from all 3 of our centers, in my opinion. Logi, Owen, Ben, which I kind of expected to a certain extent coming this year. We'll get to those guys later, other 2 later. But anyway, focusing on Ben. So, like, okay, it's like talking about diversifying your game offensively. I think you saw a little bit more of that in this game. Still kind of on a right-hand watch, in my opinion. I'm not ready to press the panic button on that because it's way too early to start pressing the panic button on something like that. The only thing we'll say is like, okay, it's like a couple times he drives left and then spins back right. First time, went up with the right hand. I don't know if he drew anything. He might have airballed it, honestly. Don't have the best angle to see that because I was on the opposite end of the court. The second time, he spun back right, but he still ended up shooting with his left hand. It was an and one. It was a good finish, but it's just kind of interesting. Like, okay, so it's like there's a little bit of hesitancy, maybe to use your right hand there a little bit. Not ready to press the panic button on that. I still need to see more there. I saw more of a diverse offensive game, which you kind of expect. He was a talented player, led the Missouri Valley in scoring. That's not a mistake. You don't just waltz your way into that. You earn that. Just kind of still to be determined. Just something to keep an eye on. Does a really good job of keeping the ball high on putbacks. Really good to see that. Building good habits, etc. I'm still like I talked earlier about, like, I might be inching towards wanting Owen eventually to be a starter. I still like what I see from Ben. I still think he has a role in this team. And really effective offensive player from all that I've seen so far. Just a little bit of a right-hand watch. A little bit. Speaking of other post players, Owen Freeman. Talking about, like, players' tendencies when it comes to Ben's moves. Owen kind of developing a little bit of a tendency. There's 2 times he caught the ball in the left block. Both times he spun to his left baseline. First time worked out. Second time he got the ball stripped. Just a little tendency you're starting to see form from Owen. What I really like from Owen is, again, you see him finish with both hands. You see him finish with his left hand. You see him finish with his right hand. That one spin move he made on the baseline, he ended up finish with his right hand, if I remember correctly. I guess don't quote me on that. I don't remember the best. I just remember he scored. But again, you see a diverse offensive game from Owen. It's still, again, a to be determined because, again, the quality of competition's just not capable of matching what we have in the front court. But I think there's mostly positive returns there. He took 1 3-point attempt. It was online. I think he has a kind of a slow release, but at the center position, I don't know if that matters too much. I think he'll be able to get a shot off. Good wrist action, good follow through. I think he has good potential as a shooter. He just missed his one attempt. And again, a continuation of what I thought from the last game, just kind of watching Logi just like shoot for warm-ups and at the free throw line. I really like Logi's shot. It's just very simple, no wasted motion. I can really get behind it. He was 2 for 3 in this game, and what you really love is just like he had just in the both 3-point makes he had like he got the ball and just like evaluated the situation for just a brief second, being like, oh, I'm just wide ass open. Let's just pull it. I love seeing that mentality start to grow. They were talking in the preseason about how, hey, they wanted to see more from him from a scoring standpoint, and you can tell like, okay, that mentality is starting to really get there because there was no hesitation once he saw that there was space to shoot, and it's good to see him not hesitate. All 3 of the centers, they didn't really shoot. They were catch and shoot situations. Didn't really see them shoot on the move, but again, they should be able to get their shot off pretty easily without necessarily being on the move. Logi playing the 4, Logi might be asked to shoot on the move a little bit more than those other 2. We still need to maybe see that a little bit, but I love his shooting potential. I think he's really going to be a great player for Iowa. I just, again, wish he was playing the 5. And I think that would be an ideal situation for him, which I think will happen next year, and I think you'll really see him break out in a big way next year. He'll be a really good player in spots this year. And kind of another thing I want to talk about, and it's like, and I just really like Josh Dick's game. Like when you like, there's always just like little teases of just like, man, like, because in both instances, in these first 2 games for Iowa, the exhibition versus Quincy and today's game against North Dakota, he shows the ability to get to the mid-range and hit fadeaways. He's 2 for 2. He might have missed, actually. Yeah, he missed the one against Quincy. But he just looks very smooth getting to a spot in the mid-range and fading away. And the first one, I think, and his one today, and he just looks so good getting to his spots. And we know he's a good 3-point shooter. He also shows the ability to handle the ball and get to the rim in both these games. It's kind of interesting because, like, again, I don't want to go too crazy because, again, it's just, he still has a lot to prove. But, man, it's like, there's just glimpses of, like, second or first option potential. There's glimpses of it. There really is. And, like, a 3-level scorer like that, potentially, I think he's more athletic than people realize. He's not loose with the ball. It's going to be really interesting to see where he is in the scoring pecking order throughout the course of this year and the course of next year. I think he's going to be higher in the pecking order than people realize. And I just want to continue to see how that plays out. A really nice move, dribble move as well. Wound up finishing through his left hand after cutting through traffic. He's really good. It'll be interesting to see where he is in the pecking order as the season develops. So, golly, what else do I want to touch on? So I should probably touch on Brock Harding. Kind of an interesting. So I think, again, I talk about like he's just the best at creating separation in this team. It's just obvious. He just moves so much differently than everyone else. His ability to create separation is just different. Most quick twitch, agile guy on the team. It's kind of interesting. Really aggressive coming off of ball screens. How many shot attempts did he take in this game? And there was one time where he banked it through. It's like, okay, I guess I'll take it. It's a little bit fluky, but whatever. But he took at least 3 pull-ups coming off of ball screens, 4 total shots. It might have been all 4. I don't remember. But really aggressive. No, there was only 3 coming off ball screens because we'll talk about the other shot attempt. Kind of poor shot selection on that one. But really aggressive hunting a shot coming off there. It's going to really, if he's consistent hitting that shot, He's going to really open up space because it's going to obviously drag that whoever's defending the screener, generally the center. If he can manage to attract that guy away from the paint and make him respect that mid-range, that three-point jump shot, coming off of that, high screen roll, what have you, that's really going to open up Owen, Logi, Ben rolling to the rim. And again, you saw him hit Owen several times. They have great chemistry. Those two will be fun to watch. And Brock is just, he's the best pure point guard on the team. That's kind of obvious. But the other guys do bring up things to the table that needs to be said. So, kind of iffy. I kind of like talk about how aggressive he's been off of the high screen roll. It's kind of nice to see, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know. It's like it really does depend on how consistent he hits those shots. Again, which we'll see over the course of the year. The stats will bear that out. There's kind of one moment I think that's just like, it came during that one media segment, 4-minute segment where Iowa got scored 11-3. He got the ball on the left corner, and there was plenty of time left in the shot clock, and he just kind of like dribbled left along the baseline and took in contested mid-range shots. Like, oh man, that's a contender for the worst shot maybe of the entire season. That was not a good shot. There was a lot of frustration, you can tell, a lot of fouls building up during that segment. A lot of sloppy play. It was the bench unit. They're freshmen. They're still learning. So maybe sometimes pull back in the aggressiveness. But again, if he's hitting those shots, those pull-up shots of high screen rolls, you got to make the defense respect it because that opens up a lot for your team. I think from an offensive standpoint, there's not really much else I want to say. I think we can get into team awards now. So the defense / hustle player of the game, I think there was good energy from a lot of players, but I got to give it to DeSante. Again, picking up guys full court, 2 steals in the game, only 1 foul, really aggressive, trying to make things happen, really wreaked havoc at the end of that first half. Really active on the glass, 5 rebounds. He's getting rebounds in traffic, getting putbacks in traffic. He's really brought the right mentality that you want to see from a point guard. Because like his role in this team is to distribute, take care of the ball, and play defense. To me, that's his role in the team, and it remains to be seen, I guess, as the competition ramps up, like how well he's going to take care of the ball, how well his decision making is going to handle as the players get more athletic and he has to make quicker decisions. But he's bringing the defense so far, and I think there's signs from last year. If you just look at the on-off stats, maybe he might be the most important defender on this team. But again, that's to be determined. Some of those on-off stuff can be faulty. But again, just really like the mentality he's bringing. It's the right mentality given his role in the team. And the game ball is got to go to Peyton. I really like what I saw. You just see so much versatility, shooting off the dribble, shooting off the move, off of screens, catch and shoots. You really saw, and on top of that, just playmaking for other people. Even if it didn't always come off well, I love these aggressive in that second half playmaking for other people, and trying to make passes. He wasn't over dribbling. Again, when I talk about playmaking, I'm not talking about like a million dribbles. I'm talking about like the ability to create for your teammates. And that can be off of 1 or 2 dribbles. And I thought he really was trying to take the initiative that second half. Really glad to see that. I'm hoping that continues. He gets my game ball, Peyton Stanford. Really good performance. I'm just so happy that I got it. We saw that at this point. I wasn't expecting to get to that point necessarily this early. And I was really hoping we would, but I wasn't expecting it. I will not be at Friday's game. I'm going to be in Charlotte. I'm doing this post game Tuesday night after North Dakota game because Wednesday morning I'm heading out to Charlotte to go see the Iowa women play Virginia Tech. So I'll be in Charlotte for a couple days, so I won't be able to see the Alabama State game in person. Don't have Peacock, so won't be able to stream it. So previewing the next opponent I'm going to be able to see, and it's a much more interesting opponent to preview, honestly, than Alabama State, is the Creighton Blue Jays. So currently ranked 8th in the AP poll right now. I believe, what are they, 12th or 13th in KenPom right now? Looks like they got bumped up to 11th. They blew out Florida A&M by like 50 or something. Yeah, by 50. They blew out Florida A&M by 51 earlier tonight. I kind of wish I was able to see that game and get a look, more of a feel for them coming in this year, but they were at the same time as the game tonight, so I'm obviously not able to do that. But you can go off of advanced stats based on last year. So just kind of thinking about their tendencies. So obviously Creighton, Greg McDermott, he's known for putting really good offenses out there. A lot of threes, very analytical. They don't take a lot of mid-range twos. There's that analytical approach. They want layups, dunks, and threes. And I think the most bears out. The only exception is Trey Alexander. He's the one guy who feels like has liberty to take those mid-range twos, and he's a really good player. So a lot of people projecting him to like have almost a All-American kind of year. And I think the stats mostly bear that out. Good from three, good shooting percentage from mid-range, good around the rim, athletic guard. So like, I think it kind of starts with them from an offensive standpoint. It'd be kind of interesting what Iowa chooses to do there. There's a couple options you can go with, whether it be DeSante or Tony. I think Iowa, and again, like, I wish I had gotten an opportunity to see Creighton, because it's like, okay, you get a feel for exactly what Trey Alexander can do, like how athletic he is, how much is he a skill guy, etc. I'm sure he's a complete package, but I just don't know for sure. So it'll be interesting to see what Iowa does to match up there. The rest of their kind of guard, they're if you look at the 1 through 4 positions, it's kind of weird. Maybe like, and you don't want to assume anything because I haven't seen them play, but maybe some athleticism concerns. That Stephen Ashworth, when we played Utah State a couple years ago in the Pentagon up in Sioux Falls, didn't really stand out that much in that game. I don't remember that game super well. It's kind of like, kind of your Bohannon type. A small three-point shooter, but has good experience and was productive at Utah State. Don't want to dog him too much because those kind of players do have value. It's just kind of like, if you combine that with like Shireman, it's like, just kind of a shooter. And Mason Miller got the start for them today at the 4. Even Isaac Trout, he's maybe athletically, I don't know. He didn't play much for UVA last year. So yeah, just surrounding 4 shooters, 1 through, and quite frankly, even their center Ryan Kalkbrenner can shoot. He just doesn't shoot super often. It's mostly guys in the 1 through 4 positions who are even shooting. Moving on to Kalkbrenner, you kind of look at his shot charts, and I got a lot of this data from CBB Analytics. His like, where exactly he's taking his shots from. Not a lot of post-up looks, from what I can tell. He shoots mid-70s around the rim. That's probably not a percentage that tells me he shoots a lot of like straight post-ups. But again, I don't know for certain. Given the fact that they take an analytical approach, and analytical people generally don't like post-up touches, he probably does most of his damage just rolling to the rim off of a screen roll or just cutting. And occasionally pick and popping for a 3, because he's capable of that. It's just not his bread and butter necessarily. So it'd be kind of interesting. when I talk about Iowa struggling in their rotations this game, this is the game that's really going to challenge that. Because, like, okay, it's like you struggle to rotate out to North Dakota. Like, okay, they're not the best team. They might just miss some wide open shots that they should make. Creighton is going to make the shots that North Dakota missed if we don't rotate properly. And on top of that, one thing I kind of noticed, and this is kind of an interesting trend, even though Kalkbrenner is 7-1, he's considered one of, if not the best defensive centers in the entire country. He didn't lead Creighton in rebounding last year. That was Baylor Shireman. When I look at Creighton's stats for today, I think that trend mostly continued. Let's see. Come on, pull up. So like again, against Florida A&M, Kalkbrenner only had 4 rebounds. If you look in the advanced stats, Creighton does not attack the offensive rebound glass, and they focus on getting a lot of defense rebounds. So like I don't think Creighton's like, and I guess it's kind of a good thing, but also it's something to keep an eye on. It's like I also talked about when you don't rotate out to perimeter players properly, it leaves them an avenue to crash the offensive glass because there's no one to box them out, and they pretty much have free run at the rim. When guys like Baylor Shireman are your leading rebounder, and it looks like Mason Miller also is one of their better rebounders. So like you're talking about guys from the wing who are going to be crashing the glass. Like you have to be aware of that. And if you're not rotating out those guys like Shireman and Miller and probably Trout, they're going to be kicking you on the offensive glass. That's kind of something to keep an eye on. Although Creighton doesn't really attack the offensive glass really a lot. I think they probably prefer to get numbers back defensively. And they also prefer to secure the defensive glass. So I don't know how much they're really going to be looking. They're going to push in transition, but I think they're concerned about securing the defensive glass as well. What else? It's kind of interesting. And again, when you talk about like Iowa's post options, Kalkbrenner, again, I said, considered one of the better defensive bigs in the entire country. He's going to test like how ready guys like Cricky and Freeman are really ready to score in a conference like the Big Ten. Like, where are they at? How capable are they at this level of scoring? It's going to be a massive test in that front. It would be interesting to see how much Iowa tries to even play through the post, given how good Kalkbrenner is there. It's going to be interesting. Though, like, you kind of talk about, I'd say probably like their top 6. I think you read like, because I'm on the almanac from the Field of 68 for this year, and you read the team preview for Creighton. There's a lot of questions about their depth. A lot of guys either been kind of just like journeymen, or a lot of new faces that are kind of like, who knows? Which you could probably say the same for Iowa, because Iowa has a lot of freshmen too. It's just something to keep in mind. It's like, okay, it's kind of considered a top-heavy team. Really a top 6 that you probably feel good about. Beyond that, I don't know. Not that you need much more than that. And the players they do have, Kalkbrenner, Trey Alexander, Shireman, Ashworth, that does make for a good core. I don't know how much of a change-up they have, though, if things don't necessarily work out on the wings or point guard necessarily so much. But again, you can say the same thing about Iowa and their inexperience on the bench. So anyway, a little concerned about how Kalkbrenner is going to affect our post-up game. I don't think this was tonight against North Dakota wasn't necessarily the night for someone like Tony to really live in the mid-range. He needed to go all the way, quite frankly, more than he did. I think in a game like this, against a guy like Kalkbrenner, who's 7-1, who's capable of blocking shots, who's a real presser on the rim, taking floaters, working in that 10 to 15 range, that honestly might be a more productive avenue. Obviously, he has to make shots. I think if Tony's has his mid-range game going, I think that's really going to open things up for Iowa because it will do a lot to neutralize Kalkbrenner out there. So yeah, I don't feel the best. It seems like a bit of an iffy matchup, and I think Iowa's still going through motions. But I don't really fear many. There's very few college basketball teams I really fear nowadays. Iowa might be blown out by Creighton. They might win. This is kind of one of the things we'll have to see how it goes. Creighton's a really good team. It's a great crowd. It'll be a good learning experience for sure. Yeah. Is there anything else I want to touch on? I think that about wraps it up. All right. Fun game versus North Dakota tonight. Looking forward to the next game against Creighton. We'll learn a lot either way. Blowout, what have you. See you around.